Hey folks, Chris Martin here, reviewing the top board of the World Diplomacy Championships from Weaselmoot in Chicago, and we are up to the spring of 1907. First, let's review what happened in the winter. You remember that Peter Jürgen was unable to build. Although he owns 5 centers, he doesn't have a home center free to build in, so he stays even. Dave Miletsky removes the fleet in the Black Sea. Doug Moore removes the fleet that was retreating from Denmark. Nathan Barnes removes the fleet that was retreating from Liverpool. And Adam Silverman builds a fleet in Eddy and a fleet in London. Let's start today by having a quick chat with Adam Silverman about what his plans are and the negotiations that he's having with Nathan Barnes about what's going to happen if Adam keeps attacking him.
What I told Nathan is, the problem for me right now is I have 2 dots in the north, Norway and St. Petersburg, which are there by the good graces of Goff.
Yep.
Not taking them, and he actually moved Moscow south, so that's St. Peter's no longer at risk. Sweden theoretically is going to the Baltic to mess around in Germany. So, assuming that happens, which I think it will, because basically Goff pulling dots off me means I pull on the other side, and it kind of stops bottling up Nathan. So I think I have a turn or 2 to get over there. And basically, I said to Nathan is, unfortunately your dots are positioned in a way that you've kind of taken everything on the coast. What else am I supposed to do right now?
Okay, and did he make you an offer or push?
No,
okay, he didn't. Okay,
I said
that's tough.
His offer was, if you do this, Chris Brand in Italy is likely to take my stuff in the south and he'll win. And my perspective is that's right, exactly. Is so what? I mean, if Chris Brand starts making gains in the south, that may open possibilities for me in the north, and we fight that game. And if it's Chris wins instead of Nathan, fine. If it gives me a chance, though, why shouldn't I take it?
Absolutely. All right, thank you. Okay, Adam makes the excellent point that if he doesn't win, why should he care if Nathan wins or Chris Brand wins? He's going to make the play that gives him a shot to win. And looking at Nathan's position, right? Nathan owns all of these coastal dots, right? That Adam doesn't own yet. The only dot that Adam could really be fighting anybody else for is Sweden. And heck, he says that Andrew Goff is going to move Sweden to the Baltic Sea. So he doesn't need to fight for that. He can go get it later. Heck, nobody's threatening St. Petersburg. Why should he do anything else? No, there's no good reason to, is there? So let's turn to the other side of the board. Peter Jürgen and Andrew Goff. Now, Andrew Goff missed an opportunity to take some dots, get some builds on the table last year, where Peter Jürgen got a build but didn't have any place to put it. Nonetheless, Peter's position has improved tremendously. Let's listen in on the conversation that Peter and Andrew have about what the right course of action is now that Chris Brand is kind of focused on the other side of the board and Turkey is mostly dead.
I feel like we're back to being viable now. You're going to pick up big sauce, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we pull the units up into the
Middle,
don't we?
it's up to you. Okay, all right.
And I hope Chris stays with us.
Okay, all right.
I think he kind of has to.
I think so too. So you're going to go to Gal.
Am I?
What's going to go to Gal? Or do you want me to go to Gal?
Oh, Romania is the fastest way to go.
Because we have got to go to Bohemia.
We just got to trust each other.
Right?
Okay, still working together. They're going to punch up into the middle. And they were talking about who's going to move into Galicia. It's Vienna to Bohemia and Romania to Galicia is the argument here. Head for the middle. It may be that that's what happens, but it may be that Peter actually has some other plans.
Yeah, he's feeling the pressure.
Okay, all right.
I think we push up
Do we
to
need
the centre.
Goffy?
That's an interesting question.
Like if I push up and set up to take the main, we go back to Continent, there's nothing that can get around it because I just pulled a G. So I'll support you to from Smith. I'll set up to put. Why not put 4 on Romania? Shouldn't I guarantee it? We should. Budapest, Serbia, Bulgaria.
4.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be using all 4 to take Romania. Or do we want to push to the do we need to push to the middle with England being so successful and England and Russia attacking? Do we need to rush it now? I think you and I can. Don't, right? You're in Tyrol? Go to Bohemia.
I'm in Tyrol, yeah. He retreated to go.
Yeah, go to Bohemia.
How do you feel about taking Russian dogs to follow up that? Not all the time.
I'm okay with that.
I've let you get a vibe.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, I think.
Because I can't take Russian dogs. It's the only reason.
It makes it hard for me to stab a coffee and take on this wrath.
Well, I mean, okay.
You see? But you know what? I want to give you stuff too, so I think you're playing the manage to keep pushing forward, right? Is that your plan down there?
I just have to watch that Turkish fleet, but I don't think that's a problem.
What if we make a mistake going after God? He's going to try. If we don't go after him first, he's going to go after us, right?
He is.
That's what's going to happen.
Because he's going to have that. He's got that sort
We can't give him that kind of flexibility.
He's going to have nothing to lose.
Let's make the moves now and then talk about kind of what we do with the dots in the fall. But I'll use all of my pieces to take Romania, basically. You're in Trieste now, so let's go. I think you still got to go to Bohemia. Right? I mean, do you need to really do anything else? I mean, are you going to keep on pushing them? Or do you want to be in the middle against Nathan?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. And again, just let me know if you need dots to keep on building, go to the rest. I'm fine with that too.
So here Peter makes this observation that, hey, our goal was to stop Nathan. That's kind of done. What do we need Russia for anymore? And this is one of the things that really makes Peter a great player, is that he's got that vision. He's not locked in. He's always thinking about the current state of the board. Now, he makes another mistake this time as to where the pieces are. He says he just pulled Aegean. In fact, Aegean is the unit that was kept. But when he makes this suggestion, you can see what he's angling for. He's trying to get Chris Brand to commit to going to Tyrolia to Bohemia, Trieste to Tyrolia. Now, that clears all these forces out of his home centers. And he says, I'm going to push up to Romania. Now, if he does that and takes Trieste back and goes from, goes to 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, suddenly Austria's back in the mix. He could make that happen. But Chris Brand makes the real ask here for Peter, saying, hey, if I'm going to keep working with you, how do you feel about me taking a dot behind you as you take Russian centers? Hey, I can't get to the Russian centers. I'm still trying to win. If we're going to work together, you've got to be on board with me winning. And Peter's reaction is like, oh, because he knows that's the question. He doesn't want to give that up. He doesn't want to commit to that. But at the same time, if he says no, what's Chris Brand going to do? Chris Brand's going to say, well, I've got this line locked down here. I don't have to push on France. I'll just roll my armies this way. I got this fleet. Hey, Dave's not going to be that mad at me. He's still going to be working with me. And there's Peter's chance gone. Now, it might be Chris Brand's chance is gone too, and Nathan can tough it out from there. But what does Peter care? If Peter doesn't win, what does he care if Nathan wins or Chris wins? So, what Peter does is he pivots. He says, you know what? I'm not going to say no. I'm going to say, oh, you're going to keep pushing forward with the fleets, right? And then he comes back at the end and says, look, if you need to take dots to keep pushing west, I'm okay with that. And that's what he tells him. And maybe he's actually okay with that. Maybe he's actually not. Let's go ahead and take a look at the conversation that happens between Doug Moore, Peter Jurgen, and Nathan Barnes, and see what's transpiring as that section of the board looks over their options.
I think we're going to put some pressure on Russia. So I think Russia's going to not be flexible enough to help Adam against you. So
Yeah.
you've still got it.
We don't have long. I don't have that long. Between
You're not.
the
Don't
between
posture. Don't posture. You're not.
Yeah, I'm only at 9-4 now.
What do you-
if Brand and Silver just decide they won't squeeze me,
They could.
no,
They could.
they absolutely.
But I don't
Like I
think
said,
there's.
I'm looking for any reason to get to take out off of Bernie.
So, but I think here's what I think Brand's thought. It's slower and because the accuracy for dots is so much better for input. So he'd go really far to the west. I could, but I think he's depends on how much it talks to golf.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is why. So
You guys talk. I'll pull back.
So the two things I want to point out here are first that Peter is really socializing this decision to attack Goff, to attack Russia, and that's a little unusual. The sense that could somehow get back to Andrew and that could be bad for Peter is usually going to be stronger than the desire to get some positive feedback and some consensus that you're doing the right thing. But he's out there, he's talking about it anyway. The second thing that I want to point to is Doug Moore's analysis of the Italian position. Now, what he says is this. He says, look how far Italy has to go to get to these centers. He's got to push into the Western Med. He's got to push into the Gulf of Leon. He's got to push through Piedmont. He's got to have enough forces in all those spaces before he has a chance to get any of those dots. Look at England. England's got access to Kiel. England's got Holland, Belgium. These 3 dots are tremendously at risk already, and Nathan's committed to using forces to hold the Mid-Atlantic Ocean. So, if I were you, Nathan, I wouldn't be so worried about Italy. The subtle text that's going on underneath that is, hey, Peter, maybe you should be a little more worried about Italy than you actually are, because where are the dots that Italy doesn't own that Italy can plausibly get? They're down here. Well, let's take a look at what Doug says when he and Peter just have a little private conversation after Nathan leaves.
He's got a great chance to win.
yeah, he's just you got to get his consequences. Yeah, right. He's he got some adversity and he's not reacting, which happens very frankly to all of us.
Yeah.
So I think you actually still have a shot to win here.
I think my shot is to attack Goff.
I think your shot is to immediately get Romania.
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
Like that. He's spread out all over the place. If Dave will help you, that's buy Dave a dime. Put Dave into something, you take something. And I think similar like how I'm using it.
That first part of the conversation is very true. So much of what you do in diplomacy depends on your confidence and your attitude towards negotiations. And as Doug and Peter both observe, Nathan's still in a great position to win this if only he can, keep his spirits up, fight through, get allies, get people to work with him. That's tough when you're leading on the top board. Everyone's going to go after you, but it's a very dynamic situation. So dynamic that even Peter, who was down to 4 centers just last year, still has a shot at this. As we discussed, he can get up to 7, and then he has the possibility to get a couple more, and he could be in a position to win this. So, as they are walking back, you may have noticed that the hallway was really empty. Now, they're in a really busy space. There are 100 people there playing diplomacy still, and as they turn the corner and walk back, hey, where is everybody? Well, it turns out that everybody is already in the room at the table because the clock for negotiations has run out. And because it is drop-dead timing, that means that if you don't have your orders in the box, that you don't have any orders submitted. Now, most tables are going to let people walk up to the table and put their orders in the box, so if they don't have something written, they aren't going to get those orders read. And it turns out that the speakers that had been out in that back hallway got turned off at some point. And so the players who are down at the end, they didn't know that. That, it turns out, is going to have an outsized effect on what happens here in the spring of 1907. Let's look at the moves. Then we're going to go back and take a look at the way the pieces get pushed. Pay attention to that. All right, so this is spring of 07.
Sorry.
Red.
Brand supports murder.
Randy. Vertical, Mid-Atlantic to English Channel. Brest supports NIO to English Channel. Spain supports Mid-Atlantic. Gulf of Leon supports Piedmont. Vienna, Budapest, Bulgaria, Greece hold. Vienna.
I didn't write yours.
Tunis.
Okay.
Tunis to West Med. Tyrrhenian Sea supports Tunis to Gulf of Leon.
Tuscany to Gulf.
Tuscany, Gulf of Leon. Tuscany, Gulf of Leon. Venice, unordered. Tiroli to Bohemia. Trieste holds. Smyrna holds. Venice holds.
Yeah, I think I didn't write what is it.
Trieste?
Trieste, I don't think I've written.
Sweden to Baltic. Silesia to Berlin. Armenia to Ankara. Rum to Gal. Sev to Moscow.
Why'd you take
Edinburgh to North. London to English. English to Irish. NAO supports English to Irish. Liverpool to Yorkshire. Denmark to Which way did you do it?
From Brest to English Channel, supported by Mid-Atlantic.
Liverpool to...
It was
Liverpool to
Yorkshire.
And what was Munich's order?
no order.
Munich had no order, so that's a balance.
G into Greece.
Then my order.
I was in order. Hey, well, did Denmark go to field?
Yeah. And I cut Berlin.
And Holland didn't have an order?
So I'm just going to scratch off spring 07 and write
Around
fall
time.
07 so I don't have to rewrite my pieces now.
So you see that clock factor had a big effect this time. A lot of Italian units didn't move. A lot of French units didn't move. None of the Austrian units moved. But that's not the bigger picture here. On the screen here, you see that I've mapped out the move as the orders were read. It was Mid-Atlantic Ocean moves, with Brest supporting that to move, but Spain supporting the Mid-Atlantic Ocean to hold. So clearly Nathan had some confusion about what it was he intended to do there. So let's change the picture here. This is the move as the pieces got pushed, and it was Brest to the English Channel with the Mid-Atlantic Ocean supporting that, and Adam Silverman goes, but wait, you stood Brest up to indicate it was riding a support, and Mid-Atlantic Ocean was moving in. And at that moment, somebody asks him a question about what Liverpool did and hands him his orders back, and things keep moving on, and Adam doesn't press. Nobody pushes to say, hey, let's go back and look at what that actual order was and see what really happened, because that is a massive difference in the state of the board. Imagine if this fleet moves up here to the English Channel, this fleet stays here in Brest, and the Mid-Atlantic Ocean then is vacant. That would be a huge, big deal. Now, after this happens, the fleet in Gulf of Leon retreats to Marseille. So let's look at that. So a pretty big change in the state of the board, even though not a lot of pieces moved. The Italians push right up on the Iberian Peninsula. Adam Silverman, as England, still looks really good. He's got no pressure here on Norway now. Now Moscow's up here. Could go and take St. Petersburg. He's got to worry about that. Goff in Russia. Pretty good shot that he's going to get Berlin here if he really wants it. Peter can claim to have kept all of his agreements because he kept none of them because he didn't have any orders written down when he walked back in the room. And we'll pick all of this up next time in the fall of 1907. Until then, I'm Chris Martin, and I'll stab you soon.